Hi there. Welcome to this addendum for how to build an operator from scratch. I wanted to cover one of the items in the last video I had to build a workaround for, and that was the wait group not working in the operator. And that's really important because if we're running on multiple routines, we want to be able to understand what's going on. So at the time, I coded a channel fix where I have multiple channels that I wait for a completion notification, and I would like to show you the solution to the problem that I was encountering that kind of occurred to me 5 seconds after I finished that video. So let's just go back and remind ourselves where we were. So effectively, I wrote a loop that would monitor select on a completion channel. The key problem with this is that the first channel that completes will break out of this loop, right? And that's kind of a big deal because we want to be able to make sure that every single subscription is closed before we return. So apart from that, there's also the issue of you having to trigger that through a channel Boolean update. And I feel like it's not super succinct, nor is it completely idiomatic to the language. You see folks doing it, but I want to try and avoid it. So let's remove that block and let's try and put in what I had to walk through the problem space and to identify what the solution was there. So we have a wait at the bottom, and that wait will effectively collect anything in the wait group and wait for it. I had a wait group.done, and the critical mistake in my last video is I had a wait group.add right here. The problem with this is that because it's an asynchronous function, the wait group add will only be called at round about the same time, or possibly even after the main thread has got to about here, right? Sort of line 30-ish. Now we're talking vaguely because I cannot really express simply the intricacies of how the architecture is doing the routine time slicing, but the problem is that effectively you can't guarantee it'll get added to the index before it hits here. So if you imagine it in a simple example, if you have 100 buckets or 100 of these routines and each one of them is being added in this loop, by the time that gets to wait, the first, say, 20 or 30 might have been added, but the end of that might not. So we have, the first 20 or 30 might get lost, but the last 70 might get added. So you can see there's a lot of ambiguity around how that would work, and quite frankly, it's not the way to implement it. So if we remove this and we put this at the top, we're effectively informing the wait group, hey, I'm going to tell you that I got X amount of things I want you to wait for, and you're essentially just going to sit there and wait till you get all of these done replies. The locking, the mutexes, the safety, all of that kind of stuff with the routine management, I'll leave to the wait group. And I'm being very careful not to say threading because it's a very different paradigm in some respects. So here, effectively, now we have a position where by moving it up into the top of the subscriptions, it's going to add it fairly for each one, and by the time it gets to line 32 outside of the loop, it will have every single subscription correctly added, and the done will block until every single one has exited. Now, this presents a bit of a challenge because this is an arbitrary position that will never get called. So I like to have code that makes sense and actually is used rather than having things like for infinites. So let's actually figure out how to do that. So we'd have an extra case in this select. We could say is complete, and then what we could do is say subscription and use the is complete channel boolean from our last video and say if it's complete, then we will call the wait group.done. Now what this means is that we need to rework that is complete function to make it more useful. And so in the upcoming videos, what I think would be a good thing to do is moving away from this very dumb context and having a context with cancellation so that we can call a trigger change in the is complete. So we're creating this cascading effectively chain of cancelable behaviors so that we can exit out of these subscriptions in a clean way. And to me, this is a much more idiomatic and Golang approach to solving this problem. So thanks again for watching. This was just a brief addendum. I want to make sure that I take the time to go through problems I encounter in videos. And you've seen me work now. We can figure out workarounds, but it's always important to go back and really understand those mistakes. And it would be a disservice to not only myself, but folks watching if I didn't go back and really identify that. I'm really excited to present the next portion of this video, which will be coming really soon. and that'll be covering actually making this operator useful. We'll be dealing with config maps, we'll be dealing with pods, we will also be looking at observability and how we can float this operator out into things like a Docker image and a Helm chart. Thanks again.